What do you see in the European financial sector? And some think Europe is undervalued. So do you agree?
Well, first of all, nobody has ever introduced himself to me as a European. They all introduce themselves as a Frenchman or a Spaniard or an Italian. I think Europe is relatively a fiction that maybe someday comes to fruition, but so far is not much of a reality. In terms of the financial sector there, we think that some countries like Ireland that bit the bullet very early are starting to get themselves turned around, and that's why we went into Bank of Ireland. Many of the other countries have not really dealt with the problems, and I think at the end of the day, the real sick man of Europe is liable to turn out to be France, not Greece, not Portugal, not Spain, not Italy. The reason is France is very, very uncompetitive to begin with on a global scale, and the measures that Hollande has been putting in have been very, very negative from the point of view of economic growth. It was bad enough that he put the 75% tax on high bracket people, bad enough he put the 1% wealth tax. What he did that I think is really wrong is he did away with the tax exemption that Sarkozy had put in on overtime. France, as you know, is a 35-hour work week, which is crazy in today's world. Sarkozy, to encourage people to work overtime, said you could pay no tax on your overtime income. Hollande immediately repealed that. So it's the worst kind of a tax. It's a middle-class tax, and even worse than that, a tax on the middle-class people who are trying to get ahead by working a little bit harder. That's not the way to make France succeed.
Are there any regions or countries outside of Europe that you're looking at?
Yes, well, we've always been active in China, and we continue to be active there. While growth is slowing down some, it still is growing. It still, we think, is one of the better managed economies in the whole world. And so while they're going into a little bit of a slower period, the wonder is that they grew as fast as they did for as long as they did. But say they slow to 6 or 6.5% growth, that would be miraculous in Western terms.
Now, there's a view that Japanese multinationals are undervalued. Do you agree?
I think many of them are, because they are fundamentally a very cheap way to play the emerging markets. Typical big Japanese company has somewhere between 1/3 and 40% of its revenues coming from developing countries. And about 1/3 of Japan's exports are also to the emerging countries. So in a strange way, Japan, which has very little internal growth, its big companies are a good way to play the emerging markets.